He was running from the past, but it was one step ahead of him. James Colt never thought that at 42 years old, he'd be starting his life with a clean slate. 15 years on the Seattle Police Department, 10 of them as a major crimes detective, had taught him one thing. Some secrets are better left unsolved. But it was one in particular that had forced him to resign and move as far away from the city as possible. Glacier National Park greeted him with silent mountains and a piercing wind in April 1998. Snow-capped peaks, sheer cliffs, and endless forests. Everything here seemed untouched by time. Colt hoped the mountains would help him forget that last case. 3 months of searching, 6 missing people, not a single body, only blurry surveillance photos and an inexplicable feeling that he'd missed something important. The first weeks as a ranger were filled with routine, patrolling trails, checking campsites, filling out reports. Colt quickly settled into his new duties, though some of the detective's habits wouldn't let go. He still noticed details that others missed and asked questions that not everyone liked. On the 15th of May, while making his rounds of the eastern sector, he first heard about the mines. Old Ranger Mike Turner, showing him a patrol map, mentioned, as if in between, that some areas were better to avoid. "There are old gold mines over there," he said, outlining an uneven circle on the map with a red marker. "It's a danger zone. No one's officially gone there in about 30 years. Something in Turner's voice made Colt wary. Years of police work had taught him to recognize when people weren't telling the truth. That evening, he pulled out the map again and took a long look at the outlined area. Memory obligingly brought up a fragment of an old case. One of the missing men in Seattle had mentioned some mines in Montana in his last letter. Colt tried to convince himself that it was just a coincidence. But when a week later he found a folder in the park archives with reports on missing hikers from the last 30 years, his hands trembled involuntarily. The faded ink on the worn cover read, Area F7, Mines, Access Restricted. He didn't know he was closer than he'd ever been. By June 2005, James Colt had learned every trail in the eastern sector of Glacier. 7 years as a ranger had taught him to respect the mountains and their unpredictable nature. He knew where avalanches occurred in the spring, where grizzly bears liked to ambush, and which trails became impassable after the first serious snowfall. But the mines were still off limits. Over the years, he had amassed an impressive dossier. Old maps, geological reports, incident reports. Officially, gold was mined here from the 1890s to the 1930s. Then mining stopped. Vein depletion, cave-ins, accidents, the usual story for those times. What was unusual was that every few years people disappeared in the area of the mines. On that rainy June morning, Colt was checking the eastern border of the park. The last few weeks had been hectic. Poaching had increased. Tourists had complained of strange noises at night. Other rangers could be heard talking on the radio now and then. "All units, this is the dispatcher speaking. We have a distress call from F7. 2 hikers have not returned from yesterday's hike. Last known route is the Highline Trail." Colt froze. F7 was the same mine district. He was about to reply when another voice broke into the ether. "This is Sheriff Raines speaking. My men will take over. Rangers to remain at their posts." Such a breach of protocol was unusual. By law, search and rescue operations in the park are the rangers' responsibility. What did the sheriff want in this case? Colt checked the map. It was about an hour's drive from his position to the suspected site of the hiker's disappearance. He hesitated briefly. 7 years ago, he'd given himself his word not to investigate any more disappearances, but something about this situation was too reminiscent of that incident in Seattle. After 15 minutes of rapid uphill climbing, he noticed fresh footprints on the wet ground. Hiking boots, deep prints. People were in a hurry to get somewhere. The tracks led to an old hunting trail, long since removed from official routes. It skirted a rocky ledge and disappeared into thick fog. The walkie-talkie on his belt came to life. "Attention all posts. Movement has been detected at the entrance to the North Adit. Do not approach. Repeat, do not approach the..." The message cut off with a white noise. Colt tried to contact the dispatcher, but heard only static. At that moment, he noticed something white among the rocks. A handkerchief. with brown stains on it. Nearby, something metallic gleamed in the dirt. Bending down, he picked up a police badge, not local, from Seattle, the same one he'd been looking for 7 years ago. Somewhere in the fog, a muffled scream was heard. Colt instinctively ducked, taking cover behind a large boulder. The sound came again, closer now, but distorted by the echo so that it was impossible to determine the direction. He pulled out a torch and a map. The north adit should be about 300 meters away behind a rock ledge. Suddenly, torch beams flickered in the fog, at least 3 sources of light, muffled voices, the crunch of gravel under their boots. Colt recognized the distinctive sound of a bolt being pulled. Clearly not tourists. "Hey, Ranger!" Sheriff Raines' voice cut through the fog. "I told you, this is our operation. Get out of here." Colt slowly rose from behind the boulder, pointing the torch beam in the direction of the voice. The sheriff stood 20 paces away, 2 deputies beside him, all in full gear, guns at the ready, too serious equipment for a simple search for missing hikers. "Strange place for county police," Colt observed calmly, picking up his badge from Seattle. "And strange company." Something flashed in the sheriff's eyes. Recognition, alarm, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Last warning, Ranger. A special operation is underway here. Your presence jeopardizes months of preparation." "Months of preparation for what, Sheriff? For rescuing hikers who went missing just yesterday?" The answer was the sound of crumbling rocks somewhere up ahead. Everyone instinctively looked up. At that moment, another scream came from the mist. A woman's scream, full of terror. It was followed immediately by the sound of a heavy metal door. One of the deputies jerked toward the sound, but Raines stopped him with a gesture. His radio came to life. "Base to group. Subject is moving toward point C. Repeat. Subject is moving toward point C." Colt felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that voice. 7 years ago, he'd heard it on an interrogation tape of one of the suspects in the Seattle missing persons case. They hadn't been able to identify the speaker then. "They're using the old ventilation system," the sheriff muttered, no longer hiding his irritation. "Leaving through the lower adits. Damn. So you have a map of the tunnels," Colt stepped forward. "And you know who these people are. How long have you been following them? How many more people were supposed to be missing?" Raines slowly lowered his weapon. "Do you really want to know, Colt? Then let's go. Just remember, you chose this for yourself." The fog began to clear, exposing the dark entrance to the adit. The rusted door showed a fresh, spray-painted inscription. "They're still here, 1,998 to 2,005 inches. For 5 years, James Colt has never been able to forget the events of that June night in 2005. Every detail is imprinted in his memory like the frames of an old photographic film. Sheriff Raines led him down the main drift, the dim light of the lanterns barely piercing the thick darkness. 8 years ago, a group of speleologists disappeared in these mines. The sheriff's voice echoed off the damp walls. "The official story is an accident, a cave-in, no bodies were found." Something about the mines wasn't right. The tunnels looked too well maintained for abandoned workings. Modern fixtures, fresh markings on the walls, signs of recent work. At the fork, Raines stopped, the beam of his torch picking out strange symbols from the darkness, not the usual miners' markings. In 1998, we started noticing strange things. The disappearances became more frequent. But most importantly, there were witnesses. They spoke of lights in the mountains, sounds from underground. At first, we didn't believe it. The deputy's radio came to life. "Unit 2 to Bays, tracks lead to the lower level, signs of activity detected. Looks like they're getting ready for something." That voice, Colt recognized it instantly. "Wait!" He grabbed the sheriff's arm. "I heard it on the interrogation tape in Seattle." "Agent Marks, FBI," Raines nodded. "We've been working together since 2003, after we realized the magnitude of what was going on." From his pocket, the sheriff pulled a tattered envelope. "In the 1930s, when the gold dried up, a private company bought the mines. Officially for geological exploration. Actually," he held out the yellowed pages to Colt. Experimental reports, lists of equipment, photographs of strange devices, and dates from 1935 to the present. "They never stopped working here," Colt whispered. "All these years." Up ahead, something gleamed in the darkness. a massive metal door with an electronic lock and security cameras. Rains reached for the remote, but froze when he heard a scream somewhere deep in the tunnels, a woman's voice full of terror. Base to all groups, the walkie-talkie came to life. Confirming activation of the Omega Protocol. Repeat, protocol. The message cut off. The next moment, the tunnel shuddered with a deafening explosion. The last thing Colt remembered was Rains pushing him towards the exit, shouting, "Run! They knew everything! The dates! They always knew the dates!" When rescuers found him at the mine entrance, he was unconscious. The sheriff was nowhere to be found. Only his notebook with a single entry. 1-998-2005-2010, and a trail of blood on the wall leading into the darkness. "Are you sure you want to come back, Colt?" The Ranger Chief's voice brought him back to reality. After that incident, a lot of people consider the eastern sector a cursed place. James looked at the transfer papers in silence. 5 years he had spent in the west side of the park trying to forget the events of that night. 5 years convincing himself that he had done the right thing by not going deeper into the mines. But now everything had changed. 3 days ago, an envelope with no return address appeared in his mailbox. Inside was an old newspaper clipping about the Seattle disappearances and a note in Rains's handwriting. "They're coming back. A new cycle begins. I know this sector better than anyone." Colt signed the papers. "Besides, we need extra patrols there in the spring." He didn't mention the strange reports of the last month, about radio interference near the mines, about tourists complaining of rumblings from underground, about fresh snowmobile tracks leading to sealed adit entrances. The snow in the mountains had begun to melt, exposing secrets buried under 5 years of ice and silence. It was time to learn the truth about what had happened in June 2005, and about why the only man who knew the answers had left a cryptic message before disappearing. Colt stood in the same spot where the sheriff's car was found 5 years ago. The March wind brought the smell of melted snow and pine needles from the mountains. Somewhere in the distance there was a rumbling sound, either the echo of a rockfall or the working machinery underground. He pulled out a map, scrawled with old markings. Miners' marks, geological faults, strange symbols, everything formed a pattern, the meaning of which he had not understood at the time. But now, checking the dates, Colt began to notice a pattern. Every 5 years, always at the beginning of spring, it was as if something underground was awakening from hibernation. The radio came to life. "All units, movement at the north entrance to Area F7. A group of tourists have breached the perimeter. Repeat." The message was drowned in static. Through the binoculars, Colt managed to spot 3 figures moving towards the old entrance. Their equipment didn't look like hiking gear. The phone vibrated. The number was unfamiliar, but the message made his heart quicken. "I'm alive. I'll meet you back where it all began. Gotta finish what we started in 2005. Rains. P.S. If you're reading this, I'm probably already dead. The files are in my office. The code for the safe is the date of the first disappearance. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't go any deeper than level 3. The postscript was written in a different handwriting. Sheriff Rains' office looked pristine. 5 years old folders, photographs on the walls, a worn leather chair had been gathering dust. Colt ran his finger along the steel door of the safe. September 15th, 1998. The date of the first disappearance. The lock clicked. Inside, a thick folder labeled Top Secret, a DVD and an envelope. On the folder was a faded inscription, Project Omega 1935 to 2010 inches. Colt pulled out the documents and began to read. In 1935, Northland Mining discovered anomalous activity in the Gleicher mines. Geological investigations revealed the presence of unexplained temperature fluctuations and electromagnetic pulses. But most importantly, a system of natural caves with signs of artificial workings was found deep within the mountain. Colt turned the page. Black and white photographs. Massive stone arches covered with strange symbols. Equipment that looked like old generators. people in protective suits at the tunnel entrance. By 1940, research showed a cyclical pattern of activity, peaks every 5 years, always in the spring. In 1945, Project Omega was launched, an attempt to harness the anomaly's energy. The first experiments led to disaster. 12 people disappeared without a trace. The walkie-talkie on his belt came to life. All stations, 3 unidentified objects traveling towards the lower entrance. Repeat, 3. Interference drowned out the end of the message. Colt looked at his watch. 1945. It was less than an hour until sunset. He continued reading. In 1998, first contact, the anomaly showed signs of intelligence. A new phase of experimentation has begun. The project is classified at the highest level. All incidents involving tourists are classified as accidents. The last pages were scrawled in Rain's handwriting. They're using the mines as a gateway. Every 5 years, the barrier thins. 2005. We almost caught them, but they knew. They always knew. Agent Marks turned out to be one of them. The next cycle is 2010. We have to stop the Omega Protocol, or they'll come for everyone. Suddenly, the lights in the office flickered. The computer on the desk switched on by itself, showing surveillance cameras. On one of them, Colt saw 3 figures in black moving through the main tunnel. Behind their backs, something flickered, like the northern lights, but underground. The phone vibrated. A new message. North entrance, 20 o'clock. Don't be late. Time is short. R. Colt stowed the documents in his backpack. Now he understood why his old case in Seattle had gone unsolved, why witnesses had spoken of a strange glow, why the bodies had never been found. Footsteps were heard in the corridor. Colt had time to hide behind a wardrobe when the door opened. 2 men in suits that looked like protective coveralls walked in. Perimeter breached. The voice was mechanical, unnatural. Omega Protocol has been initiated. Neutralize all witnesses. And Rains? He thinks he can stop the process. Naive. When the gate opens fully... They left without finishing the sentence. Colt waited a minute and slipped out into the corridor. It was a quick 15-minute walk to the north entrance. If Rains really was alive, if he knew a way to stop this... There was a surprise waiting for him in the car park. A car with Seattle registration. The same model that had been seen near the disappearance sites in 1998. On the back seat was a folder with the Northland Mining logo and a fresh date. Colt started the engine. The navigator showed the way to the north entrance. Somewhere deep in the mountains, a low rumble was building up that made the windows vibrate. On the horizon, above the mines, the sky began to glow with an unnatural greenish light. The radio came to life again. Attention all posts. Critical level of activity in Area F7. Evacuate personnel. Repeat. Critical. The connection went dead. A silhouette of a man appeared ahead. Rains. He stood at the mine entrance, leaning on a cane. Aged, gray-haired, but alive. They lied to us, Colt. His voice was hoarse. There were no experiments. The company wasn't trying to exploit the anomaly. They've been cooking it up since the beginning, every 5 years. A strange sound came from the darkness of the tunnel, as if 1,000 voices whispered simultaneously. Glowing symbols appeared on the walls, the same ones Colt had seen 5 years ago. We have a chance to stop them. Rains held out a flash drive to him. Here are the codes to shut down the system, but someone has to get down to level 3. Where it all started. What's down there, Sheriff? The truth. About what happened in 1935. About the real purpose of Project Omega, and about why they chose you. The ground shook beneath my feet. A coldness came from the mine, ancient, inhuman. Somewhere in the depths, a bright light flashed. Decide quickly, Colt. The gates are opening, and this time they've come for all of us. The eastern sector of Glacier remains closed after a series of tremors. The local news announcer spoke in a habitually upbeat tone. The Geological Survey cites natural processes as the cause. The old mines are recognized as dangerous and will be permanently mothballed. Colt switched off the radio and looked at the mountains through the windscreen of his pickup. Fresh snow covered all traces of that night. The official version spoke of an earthquake, tunnel collapse, poisonous gas leakage. No casualties were found, just empty hazmat suits and broken equipment. Rain's flash drive turned out to be encrypted. The sheriff's office was sealed and surveillance tapes were seized. Northland Mining is officially defunct. All traces of Project Omega were gone. But Colt knew the truth. He remembered the green glow deep in the mountain. He remembered the voices whispering in an unknown language. And most importantly, he remembered Raines's last words before he disappeared into the darkness again. They'll be back. Not in 5 years, they need less time now. On the dashboard lay the only surviving document, an old photograph from 1935. A group of miners at the entrance to the adit. Among them is a man who looks uncannily like Raines, and on the wall behind their backs, symbols glowing in the dark. Colt started the engine. The Geiger counter beeped quietly in the glove compartment. There, in the envelope, was a find from the 3rd level. A small black crystal pulsing in time with an invisible source deep underground. They would indeed return, and now he would be ready. Friends, you've just heard the story of James Colt in the mysterious mines of Glacier National Park. The story of a man who tried to escape the secrets of the past, but fate led him straight to their solution in ancient tunnels, hiding more than just abandoned mine workings. Do you think Northland Mining really knew what it was dealing with from the start? And what if Colt didn't just happen to be in this park by accident? Maybe something had been guiding him here ever since he'd started investigating in Seattle. And finally, perhaps Sheriff Raines was right in saying that they would be back sooner than 5 years from now? Share your thoughts in the comments. If this story touched you as much as it did me, please support the channel by liking and subscribing. There are many more unsolved mysteries hidden in the most remote corners of American national parks. See you in the next issue.